The week I am battling to get in the championship here. I decide to go through. I decide to start the Chargers defense. And yes, the Chargers defense, they allow 27 points. They do have 2 sacks, but still super disappointing here. At least Dicker, the kicker, gets the weirdest kick I've seen. A free kick for a field goal. I don't understand it still. But thank God I did not have to rely on Sutton this week in this league. Now, I did have to rely on Sutton in a ton of underdog drafts. And it looks like our underdog season may be coming to an end. We've absolutely crushed it up until this point, but you can only do so much when Courtland Sutton just completely flops. We'll go through and we will look at what happens. And I apologize for telling you to not start Justin Herbert, to not start Gus Edwards, but hell, it is what it is. Starting with Denver, Bo Nix comes through. Bo Nix has a fine performance. Again, the over-under on this game was pretty damn low. It was not supposed to be near this high scoring. I mean, it goes over 60 points. So in that kind of environment where it kind of comes down to the end, if you want to say that, of course, both quarterbacks are going to look pretty damn good. If you have Bo Nix, in terms of if you were to look to start him next week, he'll be playing the Cincinnati Bengals. So 100%, you'd be very excited to start Bo Nix next week. Looking over at the running back usage, you have Javonte getting everything as a receiver here. I mean, what's hilarious is Estime ends up getting the 9 carries and the rushing touchdown, but Javonte has 11 targets out of the backfield. So Javonte gives you a bunch of these cheap receptions. We're in a full PPR league. He leads the backfield in terms of total fantasy points. But the reality of the situation is it's split so much. None of these running backs are that good, where even in a great matchup against the Bengals, I wouldn't start any of the Denver running backs next week. Going over and looking at the receivers, super frustrating to get this game from Sutton. I mean, I don't want to sit here and cry too much, right? Because in your regular fantasy league, I guess 10 points isn't the end of the world. I mean, we've seen guys like Kupp and Tyreek flop a lot worse than this. Specifically where I'm trying to bank on this dude in some underdog drafts, though. It's like, oh, okay, well, the 10 points or even an underdog, that's only 7.5, half PPR. It's for sure not making any difference whatsoever. You might as well flop and give me 0 versus 7.5. It's not going to be enough to advance me. So brutal, but again, Sutton plays the Cincinnati Bengals in week 17. So if you're able to get through this flop and you're able to make it to the championship next week, reasonably, you would have to absolutely start Courtland Sutton. I mean, if you look at the larger sample of Sutton has not had a game with fewer than 10 fantasy points this year since week 7. The dude's just an absolute locked and loaded must-start guy every single week. And then, of course, going over to the tight end position, no tight ends are interesting in Denver. Going over and looking at the Chargers, I mean, typically this is an offense where you're expecting to see a considerable amount of rushing attempts, and really they're not going to push the overall passing volume. But actually, you get 31 pass attempts for Justin Herbert here, so not a bad spot whatsoever. Justin Herbert actually does give you 8 rushing attempts as well, so you get about 40 dropbacks for Herbert. You do get the second interception from Justin Herbert that we have seen since week 2. So Herbert, only 3 interceptions on the year. From a real life perspective, Herbert's been an absolute stud. Of course, the issue is this has just been a team that doesn't want to throw the ball a ton. And at the same time, Herbert doesn't run it at all in fantasy. And week 17 going up against the New England Patriots, to be honest with you, I'd imagine the total is going to be really low on this game in week 17. I probably want to be super excited to play Herbert then. Congrats if you played Gus Edwards somehow, some way. I actually do have him in a massive underdog tournament, and I'll show that off, I guess, real quick. Let's go ahead and let's pull that up. So just real quick, I know none of y'all care, or maybe a few of y'all. But yeah, we had advanced 41 sprint teams. It's a little too early to know how those are doing, but here we've advanced these teams up until this week. We have 3 Best Ball Mania teams at this point. But one of our massive teams, we actually did have Gus Edwards. So Edwards looks like he's pulling this team along with the cool 19.5 points. Definitely a usable week. But, I mean, unless you're in an underdog draft, there's no way in hell this dude helped you at all. Like, if you started Gus Edwards, all 12% of y'all across Sleeper, congrats and incredible. I don't know how you saw it coming. I mean, maybe if you're in a deep dynasty format, sure. But up until this point, it really had been a running back by committee where Edwards didn't have anything as a receiver, and he had been a super inefficient back. Of course, you get a long rush, so the efficiency looks good this week. But outside of that, most of these weeks, he is very easily under 4 yards per carry. But next week, it would be a decent matchup against New England, but my mind hasn't really changed much with Gus Edwards. Like, there's no way in hell I'm starting him next week. Going over and looking at Ladd McConkey. With Ladd, strong performance. Could have been better. Could have been worse. I mean, he does come through with the 14.5 fantasy points. The only thing I would say is, like, if the Chargers drop 34, based off the market share numbers that we had previously seen with Ladd, I would have expected probably a better performance. But it's a tough matchup going up against Denver. I think that Ladd McConkey still remains a must-start guy going up against the New England Patriots this next week. I mean, you've only had one game with 10 or fewer fantasy points since week 9 for Ladd. Don't care about any other receiver here, of course. I had Quentin Johnston in a few underdog drafts, similar to where we had him, Courtland Sutton in underdog drafts. Johnston, hell, you were a great pick for where we were able to get you. So I'm not going to sit here and cry about you not coming through for us in week 16 in a tough matchup. It would have been cool if you did, but it is what it is. In your regular redraft league, of course, you don't care. It looked like Stone Smart was maybe a viable streaming option where he had the 6 targets a week ago against Tampa. This week, only had 3 targets, not the end of the world. I will say he does have a coming from somebody in yours truly. I'll show y'all. I got some hat hair going on right now, but I've been told my entire life that I have a funny shaped head, which I do. It's way too big for my body. Stone Smart, funny looking head, not going to lie. But anyway, doesn't do much. If you had him, I think you can just drop him going up against the New England Patriots next week, especially if you think that the Chargers may get back one of their tight ends in week 17. And then, the Chargers defense, I don't know why I started them. They had been 7th in total fantasy points this year. They had been generating consistent pressures. Obviously, they just got smoked by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in week 15. To be honest with you, I'm probably going to hold on to the Chargers, and if I can advance past this next round, I'll be starting the Chargers DST against the New England Patriots in week 17 and hoping against the other rookie quarterback they're able to be a little bit better. And then Dicker the kicker remains a must-start kicker every single week. I don't know why I tied into whatever. If y'all don't know, I actually was at the University of Texas the entire time through Dicker the kicker's career. I believe, unless I'm mistaken, I'll have to look at how the years line up completely. He was my kicker starting like my freshman year, and he was my kicker all the way through my senior year. So for that reason and that reason alone, this is the kicker that I drafted. This is the kicker I've been rolling with this season. And we'll take the 10 fantasy points. Thank you, you fine sir. He had been 4th in fantasy points up until this game. Man, I'll take it. But, I mean, in terms of like what changes our mind from this game going to the future, I feel like not much. But I don't know. I just wish we had more than freaking 10 points. It's like a bittersweet. I guess we got 12 points. We got 10 points from Dicker the kicker. We got 2 points from the Chargers DST. And yes, this will be my matchup trying to advance to the championship. What I'm imagining Thomas is going to do is I'm imagining he's taking out Kamara and he's going to play Patrick Taylor. At least that's what I would do. We're going to need a little bit of a boost. I guess we can see if there are any interesting waiver wire options for us to pick up and drop. I don't know. Freaking Winston. Like, the thing is, look at this waiver wire. Who's the best player to pick up? F it. We'll pick up Michael Penix. Just because it's better than having nobody. But I think that's all I got for the night. And I will say, if you have any of the other running backs not named Gus Edwards in Los Angeles, just go ahead and drop them. There's no reason having them. But again, I really appreciate you, ladies and gentlemen. And really hope not only I make it to the championship in my league, but I hope you are able to do the same in yours. And also, if y'all drafted any underdog teams this offseason, hope you're doing well there. But much love. A little bit upset by the game, but it is what it is.